Well, hello again, and welcome once again to Straight Up Bible Teaching. As we continue our series here on learning about the coping mechanisms that we resort to instead of practicing biblical forgiveness, we now come to a coping mechanism called tolerating the sin. We tolerate it. Sometimes people will allow other people to continue sinning and simply put up with it, tolerate it, not respond to it, not address it. They just tolerate it. They just let it go on and on and on. And sometimes they might even claim that they are forbearing. Now, that is a term that you need to know the Bible uses. In Romans chapter 2, verse 4, and in Romans chapter 3, verse 25, Paul talks there about the forbearance of God in relation to man's sin. And so sometimes people think, well, God forbears, so I should forbear. And they put up with and they simply tolerate the sin that someone is continually doing, even though it is wounding them over and over and over again. But let's understand what forbearance really is. Forbearance is good. Obviously, God has did forbear in regards to humanity. But forbearance itself is not forgiveness. Let's understand that. It's not forgiveness. What forbearance means is to not act too quickly and to not act too harshly. So, what it doesn't mean that you don't act at all. It means you will act at some point, but you aren't going to act too quickly, and you aren't going to be harsh when you do. So let's take the extremes here. Let's think about a child who is disobedient. And sometimes a parent will see a form of disobedience and immediately the parent will react. The parent will jump to, stop what the child is doing. And quite often when they do, they are very harsh in what they're doing with that child. But the other extreme is to not do anything at all. What we need to understand is that when it comes to dealing with someone's sin, there's a right time to act and other times when we just need to wait a little bit. Let me give you an example. I know of a person who had left his wife, had gone off with having an affair with somebody else. And it was wounding the entire family. The wife didn't do anything, for the most part. She didn't try to intervene, to try to bring correction or anything like that. She tolerated it for a long period of time. Other members of the family, we finally counseled them, you need to begin to take some action. You need to draw a line, so to speak, put up some boundaries because of the damage that's being done. And so the toleration of his action had to stop. That is what needs to happen. The tolerating just simply allowed it to go on and on and on. Now the good news in this particular case was that because some of the family members took action and put some boundaries in place that made it uncomfortable for him to continue in the sin, he eventually repented, came back, and remarried his first wife. So it works when it's done right. Okay, so understand, forbearance is good, but it doesn't mean you don't act. It means you do act, you just don't act too quickly, and you don't act too harshly. God has to be involved in this whole process. Let's understand that when you're dealing with someone who is sinning continually and wounding people, your primary task is to bring that person to repentance by working with God, with what He is doing in the situation. And by working with Him, you have the best chance for success. So we never want to simply tolerate sin and just let it go on and on and on. We want to bring it to an end in the best way possible. And so toleration is not forgiveness. It is simply enabling the person who is sinning to continue. And that is never a good idea, never a good thing to do. But you need to definitely work with the Lord, figure out what needs to be done and when. And that's a subject that we will talk about more down the road when we get to that subject. All right, so that's it for this one. We're going to come back with another coping mechanism, and I hope you will stay tuned. We have a few more left, and then we will wrap this part of the teaching on forgiveness up, dealing with coping mechanisms, and we'll teach you how to discover what your coping mechanism is. So until next time, have a great day.